History flows like a river. Tell us what happened today in history.
International Nurses Day. Every May, the National Nurses Day is celebrated. What month and date is the Nurses Day? What is the origin of the Nurses Day? Every year, May 12th is International Nurses Day. This festival was established in 1912 to commemorate Florence Nightingale, the founder of modern nursing. It was the first International Nurses Day on May 12, 1912. The basic purpose of establishing International Nurses Day is to advocate, inherit and carry forward Nightingale's humanitarianism spirit of fearing hardships, willingness to contribute, saving lives and injuries, and daring to devote oneself. On this day in 1918, the rulers of Germany and Austria-Hungary, Kaiser Wilhelm II and Emperor Karl I, meet to sign an agreement pledging their mutual allegiance and determining to share the economic benefits from their relationship with the newly independent state of Ukraine, one of the most fertile and prosperous regions of the former Russian Empire. One of pre-war Russia's most prosperous areas, the vast, flat Ukraine, the name can be translated as at the border or borderland, was one of the major wheat-producing regions of Europe and was also rich with mineral resources, including vast deposits of iron and coal. The majority of Ukraine was incorporated into the Russian Empire after the Second Partition of Poland in 1793, while the remaining section, the Principality of Galicia, remained part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire and was a key battleground during World War I, with Bolshevik Russia having sued for peace with the Central Powers. By the end of 1917, the Ukraine took the opportunity to declare its independence in January 1918. On February 9, 1918, the leaders of Ukraine's newly formed Rada government signed a peace treaty with the Central Powers, in which Germany and Austria-Hungary pledged to recognize the Ukrainian National Republic and to provide protection and military assistance against the Bolshevik forces of Russia that were occupying Ukrainian territory. In exchange, the Ukrainian National Republic would provide 100 million tons of food rations to Germany. In practice, the treaty amounted to a virtual annexation of the region by the Central Powers, who forced the Russian troops occupying the country to leave under the terms of the treaty at Brest-Litovsk, signed in March 1918, bringing in their own troops to preserve order and preside over the export of the promised wheat and other food resources to their home countries. The meeting of the two emperors, Wilhelm and Karl, on May 12 was intended not only to divide the much-needed spoils of the Ukraine Treaty but also to strengthen the steadily unraveling alliance between the Central Powers as World War I stretched into its fourth exhausting year. On the Austro-Hungarian side, complete failure on the battlefield against the Russians in Galicia had only been averted by Germany's help and Russia's own revolution. Indeed, Germany seemed the only hope to preserve the dying empire. For its part, Germany was in his last desperate gasp on the battlefields of the West, throwing everything it had into a major spring offensive that had met with early success but was now confronting a hardening Allied defense, including an influx of fresh troops from the United States. Less than a month later, the Allies would launch their own offensive on the Western Front. Time was running out for the Central Powers. On the home front, rampant hunger led to strikes and a general atmosphere of discontent and frustration with the war, both at home and on the battlefield. Barely a week after the May 12 meeting, the first in a series of mutinies occurred in the Austro-Hungarian army, led by a group of Slovenian nationalists. Similar rebellions were subsequently launched by Serbs, Rusins, Ruthenians, and Czechs within the empire's troops. By the autumn, Germany was confronting mutinies within its own troops and an Allied breakthrough on the previously invincible Hindenburg Line. On November 11, 1918, the war was over. On May 12, 1949, an early crisis of the Cold War comes to an end when the Soviet Union lifts its 11-month blockade against West Berlin. The blockade had been broken by a massive U.S.-British airlift of vital supplies to West Berlin's 2 million citizens. At the end of World War II, Germany was divided into four sectors administered by the four major Allied powers, the USSR, the United States, Britain, and France. Berlin, the German capital, was likewise divided into four sectors, even though it was located deep within the Soviet sector of Eastern Germany. The future of Germany and Berlin was a major sticking point in post-war treaty talks, especially after the United States, Britain, and France sought to unite their occupation zones into a single economic zone. In March 1948, the Soviet Union quit the Allied Control Council governing occupied Germany over this issue. In May, the three Western powers agreed to the imminent formation of West Germany, a nation that would exist entirely independent of Soviet-occupied Eastern Germany. The three western sectors of Berlin were united as West Berlin, which was to be under the administration of West Germany. On June 20, as a major step toward the establishment of a West German government, the Western powers introduced a new Deutsche Mark currency in West Germany and West Berlin. The Soviets condemned this move as an attack on the East German currency and on June 24 began a blockade of all rail, road, and water communications between Berlin and the West. The four-power administration of Berlin had ceased with the unification of West Berlin, the Soviets said, and the Western powers no longer had a right to be there. With West Berlin's food, fuel, and other necessities cut off, the Soviets reasoned, it would soon have to submit to communist control. Britain and the United States responded by initiating the largest airlift in history, flying 278,288 relief missions to the city during the next 14 months, resulting in the delivery of 2,326,406 tons of supplies. As the Soviets had cut off power to West Berlin, coal accounted for over two-thirds of the material delivered. In the opposite direction, return flights transported West Berlin's industrial exports to the West. Flights were made around the clock, and at the height of the Berlin airlift, in April 1949, planes were landing in the city every minute. Tensions were high during the airlift, and three groups of U.S. strategic bombers were sent as reinforcements to Britain while the Soviet army presence in eastern Germany increased dramatically. The Soviets made no major effort to disrupt the airlift. As a countermeasure against the Soviet blockade, the Western powers also launched a trade embargo against Eastern Germany and other Soviet bloc countries. On May 12, 1949, the Soviets abandoned the blockade, and the first British and American convoys drove the 110 miles of Soviet Germany to reach West Berlin. On May 23, the Federal Republic of Germany, West Germany, was formally established. On October 7, the German Democratic Republic, a communist state, was proclaimed in East Germany. The Berlin airlift continued until September 30, in an effort to build up a year's supply of essential goods for West Berlin in the event of another Soviet blockade. Another blockade did not occur, but Cold War tensions over Berlin remained high, culminating in the construction of the Berlin Wall in 1961. With the gradual waning of Soviet power in the late 1980s, the Communist Party in East Germany began to lose its grip on power. Tens of thousands of East Germans began to flee the nation, and by late 1989 the Berlin Wall started to come down. Shortly thereafter, talks between East and West German officials, joined by officials from the United States, Great Britain, France, and the USSR, began to explore the possibility of reunification, which was achieved on October 3, 1990. 2 months following reunification, all German elections took place and Helmut Kohl became the first chancellor of the reunified Germany. Although this action came more than a year before the dissolution of the Soviet Union, for many observers the reunification of Germany effectively marked the end of the Cold War. Today, 68 years ago, on May 12, 1951, April 7, 1951, the first hydrogen bomb explosion test was successful. On May 12, 1951, the U.S. government reported that the test of atomic weapons in the Central Pacific made significant progress in the development of hydrogen bombs. In a statement omitting all the details of the tests, the Atomic Energy Commission and the Ministry of Defense said, "Unexpected progress has been made." Alvin C. Graves of the Los Angeles Science Laboratory told reporters that more useful data on thermonuclear reactions had been obtained. Thermonuclear reaction is a necessary condition for hydrogen bomb explosion. Such bombs, which use basic solar energy, will be hundreds of times more destructive than atomic bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The government statement said that atomic energy technology is developing very rapidly, so testing on the Pacific island of Eniwetok will be more frequent than ever. Firefighters finally contain a giant fire sweeping eastward across China on this day in 1987, but not before 193 people are killed. The fateful fire began on May 6 in Mohe County of the Heilongjiang Province. From the outset, authorities mishandled the blaze, failing to contain it while the size was still manageable. It spread quickly and within 2 days, 2,000 square miles had burned and 100 people were dead. Firefighters also had to contend with a separate large forest fire that had broken out near China's border with the Soviet Union that threatened to join the initial blaze. It took several more days for the firefighters to finally stop the spread of the fire as it moved toward Inner Mongolia. Although the city of Monkey was saved by controlled fire breaks set by the firefighters, the toll from this huge fire was already immense. 2.5 million acres of land burned and 50,000 people lost their homes. In addition to the 193 people who were killed, hundreds more were injured. When the fire finally burned out completely on May 27, Yang Zhang, China's forestry minister, was fired for the initially incompetent firefighting response. On May 12, 2008, a magnitude 8.0 earthquake occurred in Wenchuan, Sichuan Province, China. On May 12, 2008, at 14:28, 4.0 seconds, an M8.0 earthquake occurred in Wenchuan County, Sichuan Province, with the epicenter at 31.0 degrees north latitude and 103.4 degrees east longitude. As of 1600 on May 14, 2008, there were 3,345 aftershocks in Sichuan earthquake area, with a maximum aftershock of magnitude 6.1. According to incomplete statistics, as of 12 o'clock on September 25, 2008, the Wenchuan earthquake had confirmed 69,277 people were killed, 374,643 injured and 17,923 missing. At present, the area of Sichuan earthquake-stricken areas has reached 65,000 square kilometers, involving 6 cities and states, including Aba, Mianyang, Deyang, Chengdu, Guangyuan and Ya'an. There are 44 seriously affected counties and districts, 1061 affected townships and towns, with a population of about 20 million. According to the relevant introduction, the number of direct victims is more than 10 million. China will designate the 12th of May each year as the National Disaster Prevention and Mitigation Day.